After a few run-ins with the law, he was determined to turn his life around.
The first thing he wanted to do was make things right with his family.
He wants to do whatever he can do to get that old life back.
But before he can correct course, gunshots ring out.
The victim had 2 gunshot wounds, one in the hip, one in the head.
This appeared to be a cold-blooded execution.
Did a long-buried feud float back to the surface?
He's just gotten out of state prison.
Maybe he had an enemy. Maybe he owed something to somebody.
Or was he betrayed by someone closer to home?
She's seeing another man.
I said to him, please, please don't shoot him.
He had recently gotten to some money, $41,000 to be exact.
They put the pieces together. They planned it perfectly.
But is that enough to get away with murder?
There were a lot of holes in the story.
He put the gun to my head and he said, get the out of my way.
They're pointing the fingers at one another. So who, if anyone, is telling the truth?
Wait. What do you want?
November 14, 2007, Albany, New York. The Empire State's capital city is a place where old-world charm blends with modern, trendy vibes.
When you think of New York, you think of the Big Apple, you think of New York City. But when you go a little further north, you find out about upstate New York. Albany is New York's oldest city, and the people here are loving. It's all about family here. It's a hidden gem.
People know each other. There are beautiful parks. It's pretty much a safe place to live.
But after night falls, Albany's peace is rattled when gunfire breaks out on the city's south end.
Around 11 p.m. that night, the police received a string of 911 calls stating that there were shots fired at an apartment complex.
When officers arrive on the scene, they see a young black male lying in a pool of blood in the parking lot of the apartment complex.
As first responders rush to his aid, they realize the man has been shot multiple times.
It looks like he's been hit at least twice, once in the hip and once in the head.
His breathing is very faint and he is unconscious, but somehow he's still alive.
First responders immediately started applying first aid, trying to save this man's life.
In the process, they discover who the victim is.
Here you go, officer.
They were able to identify him as 32-year-old Tyrone McCoy.
They were focused on everything that they could to try to keep Tyrone alive.
New York native Tyrone McCoy was determined to soar above his humble beginnings.
Tyrone was the eldest of 4 children who grew up in a low-income home in Albany.
Tyrone had a beautiful personality, a bright smile. He was a magnet for all of those around him.
Because he grew up in poverty, Tyrone started to explore other options of success so that he could be a great example for his siblings and make his family proud.
He could have easily been discouraged, so the fact that he was able to still be determined and wanted to, still focus on bettering himself says a lot about his character.
As Tyrone was starting a new chapter in his life, there was a glimmer of hope for him.
Tyrone met a woman from his hometown named Tamira.
The moment they first met, he thought she was beautiful, that she was funny.
He was immediately wowed by her beauty, her intelligence, and the two just hit it off.
You got kids or something?
Nah, maybe one day. What about you?
I've got 2, but their dad isn't around. They talked for hours, and the conversation just flowed like they'd known each other forever.
Well, you want to get out of here?
Sure.
Before he knew it, Tyrone was falling in love.
It didn't take long at all for Tyrone to fall hard for Tamira. They were inseparable. He would do anything for her.
They end up getting together, getting married, and they have a child on their own.
for Tyrone, this was the life he always dreamed of.
But unfortunately, Tyrone's desire to provide for his family got him into some trouble.
Unfortunately, he gets involved in some criminal action.
Tyrone was arrested for robbery in 1997. He was sentenced for 3 years.
He was released in 2000, and he decided that was the moment he was going to make a 180 on his life and get back on track.
However, Tyrone eventually fell off course again.
While Tyrone and Tamara were building a life together, Tyrone was arrested yet again for drug charges.
Unfortunately, this time it's a much longer sentence, a 24-year sentence, as opposed to the 3-year stint he had done earlier.
Behind bars for a second time, Tyrone was consumed by guilt for the position he'd put his family in.
It must have been gut-wrenching to just kind of have to give it all up and to know that he wouldn't be able to provide for his family like he had wanted to.
However, Tyrone was determined to make things right.
So he became a model prisoner.
He stayed out of trouble. He did everything that he could.
And eventually, his good behavior paid off.
Instead of serving the entire 24 years, he ends up getting out in February of 2007.
Tyrone? And the first thing he wanted to do was make things right with his family.
Can we talk?
Sure.
But from Tamara's point of view, it wasn't so simple.
What's wrong?
I'm not sure about this, Tyrone.
4 years had gone by. She decided to move on with her life, and she was quite unsure if she wanted to open those old wounds with letting Tyrone back into her life.
Look, please, give me another chance. I promise I'll never do this to you again.
I don't know, Tyrone. I need some time to think.
Okay. Take your time. I'll be waiting.
He wants to do whatever he can do to get that old life back.
In an attempt to win Tamara back, Tyrone would take Tamara out on dates. He would buy her expensive gifts.
He was determined to put his family back together. He was willing to do whatever it took.
As far as he was concerned, there was nothing that could stand between him and Tamara.
But now, instead of winning back the love of his life, Tyrone McCoy has been found shot outside an apartment complex in South Albany.
When the first responders arrived on the scene, they immediately tried to administer first aid.
As they're helping him, his breathing is shallow. It looks like he's been hit at least twice.
The paramedics do everything they can to save Tyrone's life, but it isn't enough.
He's gone.
The gunshot wounds to Tyrone's head were too severe.
He ended up dying on the scene.
When homicide detectives arrive to sift through the evidence, one question is at the front of their minds.
Who could have done this and why?
Tyrone McCoy has a criminal record. He's just gotten out of state prison.
Could someone from Tyrone's past have come back to settle a score with him?
After getting released from prison in 2007, 32-year-old Tyrone McCoy was trying to put his life back together.
Tyrone was ready to turn over a new leaf and begin the life he felt he deserved.
He really vowed to turn his life around.
He is making his effort to try to win back his wife.
But now, instead of reuniting with his family, Tyrone has been taken from them forever after being gunned down at an apartment complex in South Albany.
The question is immediately, who did this? Who shot Tyrone?
Based on Tyrone's background, one possibility has already occurred to the investigators.
Tyrone McCoy has a criminal record. He's just gotten out of state prison.
Right off the bat, police are wondering, could someone from Tyrone's past have come back to settle a score with him?
Maybe he had an enemy. Maybe he owed something to somebody.
Regardless, one thing's for certain. Tyrone didn't go down easy.
The victim had 2 gunshot wounds, one in the hip, one in the head. We've determined that he was likely running, as would be his killer. So the first wound was likely the hip, which put him down.
The theory is supported by a trail of blood leading through the parking lot.
It strongly suggests that he saw his killer and he tried to get away from him. And the shooter or killer pursued him.
After chasing down his victim and wounding him, it looks like the killer stood over him and fired a final shot to his head.
This wasn't a crime of opportunity. This was someone who was intentionally going after Tyrone.
This appeared to be a cold-blooded execution.
Near Tyrone's body, detectives locate a couple more key pieces of evidence.
As police are investigating, near the body, they find Tyrone's cell phone, and they also find several .357 shell casings that they believe belonged to the murder weapon.
They bag them up and send them off to ballistics for testing.
But other than that, detectives are at a loss.
The crime scene didn't offer any clues as to who would want Tyrone dead. So the officers decide to canvass the area and see if anybody witnessed this occurrence.
As officers start going door to door, it's not long before they run into a woman who says she saw everything from her apartment window.
She was one of the individuals who called 911.
Yeah, it was around 11 o'clock, and I was just getting ready for bed. And then I heard bang, bang, bang outside my window.
She said she heard 8 shots in total.
She ran to the window, and that's when she saw 2 men running through the apartment complex parking lot.
Detectives are certain one of those men was Tyrone McCoy.
She sees the man with the white bandana fire at Tyrone, shoots him.
Then the shooter ran to an SUV and drove off.
Unfortunately, the witness said it was too dark and she was too far away to make out any identifying information or the license plate.
Well, thank you very much for your time. We'll be in touch if we need any more information.
But as detectives prepare to leave, another young woman approaches them.
Excuse me? Are you the police?
Yes. How can we help you?
She tells detectives that she has some information that they may want to know.
My name's Tamara McCoy.
Tamara tells detectives that she is Tyrone McCoy's wife.
She says she lives at one of the units in the apartment complex.
I think I know what might have happened tonight.
That stirred tremendous curiosity from the detectives as to what the real story is.
They were finally about to get some answers in this case.
Police in Albany, New York, are investigating the murder of Tyrone McCoy after he was gunned down in an apartment complex parking lot.
The killer stood over Tyrone and shot the final shot into his head. This was cold-blooded murder.
Immediately, investigators are wondering, did someone from Tyrone's criminal past come to hunt him?
But now, an important new witness has just approached police at the scene of the crime. Tyrone's wife, Tamara McCoy.
I think I know what might have happened tonight.
I think at this point that would have stirred tremendous curiosity from the detectives as to what the real story is.
Tamara agrees to accompany the detectives back to the police station to give an official statement.
Sorry again for your loss.
Thank you. Now what can you tell us about Tyrone?
Tamara explains that while she and Tyrone are still legally married, they haven't been estranged because he's been in prison the last few years on a drug possession charge.
You two didn't get back together once he got out?
No. I wasn't sure if I was ready for that yet.
However, Tamara said that since Tyrone's been out of prison, He's been trying to woo her and win her back.
He keeps buying me presents, taking me out to eat, stuff like that.
Tamara hadn't made up her mind of whether she wanted to be reunited with Tyrone, but she also said she didn't wish him any ill will.
In fact, Tamara says she was doing her best to set Tyrone up for success.
When he got out of prison, she rented a hotel room for him to live in.
It's not that far, really, from where Tamira and her kids live. So he's able to come over and visit her, and things seem to be going okay.
When was the last time you saw Tyrone?
A few hours ago. We went out to eat tonight.
Tamira told police she had gone out to dinner with Tyrone that very night.
He dropped her off and she went upstairs to her apartment. A few minutes later, she heard gunshots.
But Tamara says she didn't realize Tyrone was the target of those gunshots until she heard the buzz around the apartment complex.
When she found out that someone had been shot and that someone was Tyrone McCoy, she was stunned.
That's when I came and I found y'all.
To the detectives, it seems like Tamara is being upfront with them.
She's very cooperative, and she seems very willing to provide information.
She's answering all their questions. She even draws them a map of the apartment complex for them to take a look around.
And that's not all.
She admits there's one person that comes to mind as a potential suspect.
When Tyrone got locked up, I didn't just wait around for him, you know?
While Tyrone was in prison, she moved on, and that included her love life.
I met somebody.
His name was Jamar Johnson.
While Tamira has been living by herself because Tyrone was in prison, she met Jamar and the two became romantically involved.
I'm afraid he might have something to do with this.
She told the police that she and Jamar had broken up, that they weren't together, and that Jamar was very upset about her ending their relationship.
He still wasn't over her.
And he became furious when he found out that Tyrone was back in Albany and trying to win her back.
The last time I saw him, he told me he was gonna pop Tyrone.
Pop him?
According to Tamara, Jamar had gotten so angry with Tyrone that he was threatening to shoot him.
Now it seems like he may have followed through on his threats.
Police in Albany, New York are interviewing Tamara McCoy, the estranged wife of shooting victim Tyrone McCoy.
Tamara approached police saying that she's Tyrone McCoy's wife and that she might have information about what happened.
And Tamara's just made a shocking accusation.
She was telling them about how, although she was married to Tyrone, she had been seeing a man named Jamar Johnson.
Tamira McCoy has suggested that if anybody had a reason to have shot her husband, maybe Jamar Johnson is that person, because he did make a threat to quote-unquote pop her husband.
He told me he was going to shoot Tyrone.
The investigators agree that Jamar's threat makes him the #1 suspect in Tyrone's murder.
Now, this doesn't place Jamar at the scene or proves he shot Tyrone, but it certainly gives him motive to want Tyrone dead.
He's certainly a person that they want to chat with.
And when detectives run a background check on Jamar, they learn this isn't his first run-in with the law.
Jamar had been in prison for a number of years on drug dealing charges.
But there's no history of violent crime.
Hoping to speak to Jamar, detectives issue an alert to law enforcement in the area.
They put out a bolo advising police officers to be on the lookout for Jamar Johnson.
In the meantime, detectives head back to the apartment complex with Tamara.
She was going to walk them through her and Tyrone's movements that evening. She was going to show them exactly where he dropped her off before he was killed.
Parking lot on Grand Street, South Pearl Street Projects. With me is Detective Kubish. Detective Lieutenant Ron Mayfield. You are Tamara McCoy. We're here to discuss the events of November 14th, which was last night, sometime after 10:30 p.m.
As detectives talk with her at the location where her husband was shot, the beginning of her story remained the same.
But then, her story begins to change from what she initially told detectives.
Tamara admits that when she pulled into her parking lot, she saw Jamar.
Then I saw his car sitting right there.
Where did you see his car?
Right across, like, by the bus.
In the parking lot across the street?
In that moment, she knew something was wrong.
Everything all right?
Just stay here, okay? I knew what his intentions were.
Which were what?
To shoot Tyrone McCoy.
Okay.
And I told him, and I said, please don't do it. Please don't do it.
Jamar, don't. No, I'm not going nowhere. Don't.
Hey, what's going on? Man, who are you?
But according to Tamara, Jamar wouldn't listen.
She stood in front of Tyrone, shielding him with her body.
And I said to him, please don't shoot him. Please, please. He put the gun to my head and he said, get the f out of my way before I shoot you.
At that point, Tamara says Tyrone stepped in and confronted Jamar.
Shoot, you want to shoot somebody? Shoot me. Do it, you bad? I'm a gangster.
Tyrone McCoy spoke up. He said, you want to shoot me? That's what you came to do? You came to shoot me? Bring it then, because I'm gangster.
Tamara says that's when Jamar started firing.
She saw Jamar chasing Tyrone, shooting at him as he ran.
I heard the shots being fired.
Tamara said she was so scared that she ran inside her apartment and locked the door, and that she didn't come out again until police came that night.
It's a gripping story, but is it the truth?
Why didn't she tell them all of this from the get-go?
Contradictions are a major red flag for law enforcement.
Investigators believe she wasn't being completely honest.
They don't know if this is because she was trying to protect Jamar or she has something to do with what happened.
Now, detectives are more eager than ever to get Jamar's side of the story.
Luckily, a few hours later, detectives got word Jamar was spotted in Albany and he was taken into custody.
However, when detectives sit down to interview Jamar, he ices them out.
When officers first question Jamar Johnson, he's closed off, he has his walls up, and he just isn't willing to tell them anything.
I don't have anything to say to you.
He goes for nothing. He knows nothing. He wasn't there. That's his story, and he's sticking to it.
But the investigators have an idea to break down his walls.
They go talk to Tamara and ask her to go talk to Jamar and tell him to just be honest.
They suggest that she tells him to tell the truth, and she agrees to do it.
When Tamara walked into that room, Jamar's jaw about fell off his face. It was like he saw a ghost.
Tamara, what are you doing here?
You have to tell them what happened, Jamar.
Why? Did you?
Yes.
After Tamara speaks to Jamar, he breaks down and he decides that he's gonna come clean and tell the police everything.
But the detectives aren't ready for the bombshell he's about to drop.
All right. So you want to know the truth?
Jamar, he reveals that, yes, he was in fact the shooter. He did in fact shoot Tyrone.
But he says it wasn't his idea.
Well, then whose idea was it?
It was hers. She set this whole thing up.
He says Tamara was the mastermind behind this entire plot.
New York police investigating the murder of Tyrone McCoy are closing in on the man they believe is responsible for taking his life.
They have identified Jamar Johnson as their primary suspect based on Tamara, Tyrone's estranged wife, telling them that she's been involved in a love triangle with both men.
And I said to him, please don't shoot him. He put the gun to my head and he said, get the f out of my way before I shoot you.
She saw Jamar chasing Tyrone, shooting at him.
But Jamar has just made a shocking allegation that will turn the case on its head.
The whole thing wasn't even my idea.
Well then, whose idea was it?
It was hers. She set this whole thing up.
Jamar admits that while he may have been the one that pulled the trigger, none of this would have ever happened if Tamara wasn't pulling the strings.
She told me to kill him.
Jamar also says the motive for the crime wasn't jealousy. It was money.
Jamar says, look, I had no animosity toward Tyrone McCoy.
Once Tyrone got out of prison, he reached out to Tamara and told her that he had recently gotten into some money, $41,000 to be exact.
Was it an inheritance or something?
No. He held some spot up.
Tyrone told Tamara that after he was released from prison in February, he participated in a robbery in New York City, and that's how he got the $41,000.
That's when Tyrone started trying to rebuild his relationship with his wife.
In an attempt to win Tamara back, Tyrone used his money to take her out on dates and buy her expensive gifts.
He was trying to rekindle what they once had.
There was just one problem. Tamara was already falling in love with Jamar.
But even if Tamara had already moved on, there was something she still wanted from her husband.
She wanted his money.
And she soon came up with a way to get it.
She came up with a plan to rob and murder her husband.
And on the night of November 14th, she put her plan into action.
When Tyrone asked Tamara out on a date that night, she agreed to go with him. She knew this was their chance, so she told Jamar to be ready.
And as dinner came to an end, Tamara gave Jamar the signal.
Let me run to the bathroom real quick before we head out.
Okay. Hey, we're about to leave soon. You ready?
She called me from some restaurant. She told me to come to the apartment right now.
Jamar says that when Tamara called from her cell phone that night, it was to tell him that the hit was a go.
Jamar admits he drove to the apartment and laid in wait until Tyrone and Tamara pulled up.
After Tamara got out, he approached the vehicle.
I was already there waiting. I started walking up to him. Tyrone saw me.
Oh, shit. I'm sorry, Tyrone.
Tyrone took off on foot.
Jamar fired the gun several times as he took off after him.
Jamar chased Tyrone around the parking lot, and he eventually hit him in the hip, and Tyrone went down.
Wait. What do you want, man? I got money.
Yeah, I know.
Jamar stood over him and shot him in the head in cold-blooded murder.
What did you do with the gun?
I threw it in the Hudson River.
It's a stunning confession from the man police are now certain took Tyrone's life.
Following Jamar's confession, Albany police charge him with murder and they book him in Albany County Jail.
However, Jamar's confession isn't enough to also charge Tamara for the murder plot.
Detectives are now looking at two people who agree and effectively confess to being at the scene, but they're pointing the fingers at one another. So who, if anyone, is telling the truth?
It's possible Jamar wants to bring Tamara down with him because she ratted on him to the police.
And maybe the story he was telling was payback for her snitching on him.
To get to the truth, the investigators need more evidence.
When police manage to unlock Tyrone's cell phone, they find a clue, which appears to support Jamar's version of events.
They find pictures of a large amount of cash in what appears to be a hotel room.
Investigators note that the photo was taken on November 13th, 2007, just one day before the murder.
That seems to be consistent with what Jamar said about Tyrone coming into a large sum of money not long before his death.
If Jamar is telling the truth, does Tamara have that same cash in her possession now?
Detectives execute a search warrant to Tamara's apartment.
And they find just what they're looking for.
They discovered a large sum of currency, approximately $10,000, between the mattress and box spring.
Detectives can't help but think that this is part of the same cash that Tyrone had photographed.
To confirm their hunch, detectives reach out to the motel where Tyrone had been living and obtain surveillance footage from the hours before the murder.
When the police review the surveillance camera, they strike gold.
Around 7:30 p.m., Tyrone leaves the motel.
A few minutes later, Tamara arrives.
She approaches the front desk and starts talking to the hotel manager. It almost appears as if she's flirting with him.
She was able to manipulate the hotel management into letting her have access to Tyrone's motel room.
The police find Tamara sneaking into Tyrone's room while he's away.
She's in the room for about 5 minutes, and then she leaves. What was she doing in there without Tyrone?
Police in Albany, New York, have charged 30-year-old Jamar Johnson with murder after he confessed to shooting his girlfriend's husband, Tyrone McCoy.
He admitted that he did shoot Tyrone. He killed him, and it was in an attempt to take his money.
But they're still looking for evidence that Tyrone's wife, Tamara, was the mastermind behind the crime.
Now detectives think they've just uncovered the evidence they need to connect Tamara to the murder plot.
They were able to obtain the surveillance footage from the hotel where Tyrone was staying.
The surveillance images show Tamara getting into the motel room without Tyrone, suggesting that she was in fact attempting to steal from him.
They believe she robbed him.
When the investigators present their findings to a grand jury, they agree.
The jury decides to indict Tamara on second-degree murder, conspiracy, and manslaughter.
But with only circumstantial evidence tying her to the homicide, this case is going to be anything but easy.
In November 2008, Jamar Johnson is the first of the accused couple to stand trial.
Jamar Johnson is really, presented as this third person in a love triangle. A person whose role in this was both as the person who was the other man and the trigger man.
But in a surprising move, Jamar takes the stand and claims that he never confessed to shooting Tyrone.
He claims the police made it all up.
He denies everything.
Jamar was like blaming everybody else but himself. He said at one point, "I'm no monster, I'm no killer," and he was really portraying the picture of himself as a victim of the judicial system.
However, Jamar's behavior on the stand isn't doing him any favors.
He got a little too casual up there, because while he's testifying, Jamar starts laughing. And that's like throwing a hanging curveball to a prosecutor. They just swing at it. The Albany County prosecutor says to Jamar, "Mr. Johnson, do you find this funny?" And then Jamar says that he does find the whole thing funny.
After the jury retires to deliberate, it's clear the prosecution has hit the home run they were hoping for.
There was little Jamar could say to prove that he wasn't a part of this crime, and so he was found guilty.
But because investigators believe Tamara was the mastermind, Jamar's charges don't meet New York's criteria for first-degree murder.
Jamar was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 28 years to life.
Tamara McCoy stands trial 2 months later, in January of 2009.
Unlike Jamar Johnson's trial, I think there was a lot of questions heading into the trial of Tamira McCoy as to, for one, did she do it? And two, will they convict her if she did?
Armed only with circumstantial evidence, prosecutors do their best to build a case that will convince the jury.
Prosecutors intended to prove that if it were not for Tamira McCoy, Tyrone McCoy would still be living.
They argue that after Tamara found out what kind of money Tyrone was sitting on, she was dead set on getting her hands on it.
At first, she lets Tyrone take her out on expensive dinners, giving her gifts, all while she's seeing another man.
But eventually, Tamara wanted more.
She got greedy and decided she wanted all that money to herself.
She decides that she's going to take it by any means necessary.
So she came up with a plan.
On November 14th, 2007, Tamara snuck into Tyrone McCoy's hotel room to steal his money while he was out.
They say that the plan was to steal money, to then cover up the crime with murder, eliminate her husband she doesn't want to be with anymore, and the two of them, Jamar and Tamira, can then live happily ever after.
When Tamara went to dinner with Tyrone later that night, prosecutors allege that she was plotting his demise the entire time.
She is setting up Tyrone McCoy for death at that moment. He doesn't know it. He thinks he's on a date, but he's basically on the last ride of his life.
When they arrived back at Tamara's apartment complex minutes later, Jamar was already waiting for them.
There, Jamar approached Tyrone.
What's this? Tamara.
I'm sorry, Tyrone.
He chased Tyrone through the parking lot.
And he gunned him down.
Wait, man. I got money.
I know.
The lead prosecutor tells the jury this is one of the most premeditated murder cases he has ever tried.
But prosecutors say when the murder was completed, Tamara's clever scheme was far from over.
As much as Jamar thought that he and Tamara were in love, she was just using it.
She then turned on her boyfriend, telling police that Jamar acted all on his own and she knew nothing of the crime.
His name is Jamar Johnson, and I'm afraid he might have something to do with this.
She essentially made Jamar the fall guy.
What are you doing here?
The irony is if she hadn't thrown Jamar under the bus in the first place, maybe they both would have gotten away with it.
She thought that Jamar was infatuated enough with her to continue to be her puppet, but she was wrong.
When he found out that she was throwing him under the bus, all loyalty went out the door.
The jury isn't falling for Tamara's charms either.
The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours, and they found Tamira McCoy guilty on all charges, including second-degree murder and conspiracy.
The judge sentenced her to 25 years to life in prison.
Tamara spends 11 long years behind bars, until she's up for parole in 2020.
The parole board opted to release Tamara early.
New York State's parole board, particularly under Governor Cuomo's administration, they began to be very, very light-handed. So the system says, Tamara paid her price to society.
Today, Tamara McCoy is once again a free woman, while Jamar Johnson remains in the custody of the New York State prison system.
He won't be eligible for parole until May of 2036.
My kids, they'll never know who my father is. That's the part that hurts the most.
She was awakened by her husband screaming out her name, and he was on fire.
Revenge
is based on an unsatisfied feeling within yourself. I need you to feel what I feel. And the only way that I can get you to feel what I feel is to hurt you.
You just keep hurting each other, hurting each other, hurting each other.
You have to be able to control that impulse that's inside of you. And if not, this is the result. On December 14, 2006, in Norwalk, Connecticut, 911 operators received a frantic call that there was a fire.
When the paramedics and police got there, they found something a little strange, something completely different from what they expected.
Rather than a house engulfed in flames, they find a man struggling to back out of the driveway.
The victim was observed operating his vehicle, trying to take himself to the hospital. He was in a lot of pain and in shock.
He was severely burned over the upper torso of his body. The police didn't understand how this man was even functioning at this point.
The burns were terrible. You know, they were from his chest all the way to his knees.
He seemed to be delirious and incoherent, but what they could clearly make out, that he said he woke up and he was on fire.
The first priority is going to be to take care of the victim and make sure the victim gets medical attention and gets to the hospital.
As first responders attend to the man, 3 other people emerge, explaining there's no active fire inside. One identifies herself as Mary Ann Langley. She says the victim is her husband, 55-year-old James Langley. The people with her are her niece and nephew, who live next door with Mary Ann's sister. All 3 are shaken, unsure of what happened, and worried about James.
James Langley was born and raised in Farmville, North Carolina. He was a typical Southern young man. He grew up riding his bike, fishing. He was one of 8 siblings.
My brother James, he was a nice guy. He was competitive. Anything he was doing, he wanted to be competitive. He and I used to do everything against each other, if you want to look at it that way, and laugh about it afterwards.
James and his brothers learned at an early age that the way to get what you want in life is to work hard.
As a child, we would get up, 5:30 in the morning, work 12 hours a day. We knew how to run any kind of machinery or tractors and animals or whatever the case may be. We could do it, We were used to working and working hard.
In the late 1960s, James's older brother, Willie, moved to Connecticut, seeking new opportunities.
My father and them, they seen how my uncle was doing. And when he was coming back with the cars and the nice clothes, and he said he wanted to leave and come live with my Uncle Willie so he can make a better life for himself.
James came from North Carolina probably in our junior high school years. James was a country boy at heart, very likable character, full of life. We did car racing together, illegal drag strip racing, and then that plus our time in school and young ladies that we were involved in at the time, we became pretty close friends.
At 18, James got married to his high school sweetheart and went to work for the Connecticut Department of Transportation.
My father married my mother, Barbara Coleman, when she was 18. My father worked at the Department of Transportation. He started off cutting grass and getting roads ready when they were cracked up, putting the seal in the cracks. And then he moved up to be the foreman.
James had 2 sons. That would be James Corey Jr. and Terrence. And they were basically less than a year apart.
Unfortunately, James's dedication to work didn't leave room for much else.
He would work from sunup probably to sundown, and then, you know, his wife would be angry. He'd come home and just flop down on the living room floor to watch TV, and that would be the end of his day. And she'd be yelling around the house, you know, you're out there, you're doing too much. And he eventually got divorced after about maybe 7 or 8 years, and he moved on.
James was determined to be a great father, and he made sure his boys stayed very close to him.
Though James had been divorced once, he never gave up on love. One day, at his son's Little League game, he met Marianne Stokes.
Marianne was from the South originally. She was a kind-hearted lady. She was a churchgoer and family-oriented.
Marianne had a relationship. She got married, and through that marriage, she had a son named Daryl. Unfortunately, the marriage didn't work out for her. So meeting someone like James was pretty something she was ready for.
He had just gone through a divorce, and he was going through some things of his own, I guess, with being alone. You know, they just became a couple, and it worked out, and they went together for quite a while.
In 1981, Marianne and James decided to get married. So the blended family, her one son, his 2 sons, they all became one cohesive group.
Mrs. Langley really loved her husband. She loved him very much. She cooked for him. She cleaned for him. He was a diabetic, and she really took care of him.
He was a great cook, and if you went in that house, there was food within arm reach anytime you went there. They were big eaters. You know, we were country people. We all were country people, and we all cooked. So we did it big, I tell you.
Family life was going well, but James realized his hard work wasn't being recognized at the Department of Transportation.
After a number of years of being passed over for promotions, James decided to start his own landscaping and paving business in 1988.
James was extremely competitive. He wanted to win at everything he did. So when it came time for him to open up his own business, he went full force. The same way he put in that work for other people, he decided to put the work in for himself.
James enjoyed being his own boss and providing Marianne with a comfortable life. But most importantly, he wanted to set a good example for his sons.
He would have his children work with him. He would take them out on jobs with him, show them how it's done, so later on that they could, you know, be enterprising young men themselves.
Most of the time he wanted us to be out there working when we was, instead of out in the street having a good time. He tried to plant a seed that you gotta work for you. In order to get what you want in life, you're gonna have to get up and you're gonna go to work and go get it.
Because the business was flourishing so well, James was able to invest in real estate properties. He had rental properties, commercial properties.
He wanted to get bigger, and he had other dreams of selling out later on to stockpile finances so that he would be comfortable.
It resulted in a quite comfortable lifestyle. By the time they had reached their late 40s, they had amassed an estate worth well over $1 million.
On December 4th, 2006, James celebrated his 55th birthday and finally started thinking about retirement.
He was rambling on about leaving and going to move, sell everything, or take the equipment and I should just move back to North Carolina. So I said, well, if that's what you want to do, then let's do that. Let's just pick up and go.
Now, it seems he may never get the chance. 10 days after his birthday, James is rushed to the emergency room, suffering from severe burns.
The police went and checked on the house to make sure there's no other victims and that the fire was, in fact, which it had been, put out. And upon their entering into the residence, they detected a strong odor of gasoline.
While doctors struggle to stabilize James Langley at a Norwalk, Connecticut hospital, detectives speak with his wife, Marianne, to find out what happened.
When the investigators initially interviewed Marianne, she was quite distraught. Marianne said she had fell asleep in the basement and she was awakened by her husband screaming out her name.
She said that she saw the kitchen light off and the sparkling of fire.
She was terrified and unsure what to do.
She panicked and ran next door to her sister's house and began frantically banging on the door to try to get some assistance, and that's when they called the police and the ambulance.
She really did not offer any explanation as to how what happened to James could have happened.
Authorities combed the house for evidence, led by Fire Inspector John Lumba. For him, this is no ordinary investigation. He has a personal connection to the victim.
The case was very difficult for me, basically because it involved human life, and it involved a friend that I had known for many, many years. But I couldn't allow that to, sway an opinion or anything. It went strictly by evidence.
It was apparent that the fire was contained to one area of the house.
Investigators, upon looking into the master bedroom, they see that there's burn patterns on the carpet.
There were droplets of burn patterns, but it wasn't a consistent burn. It wasn't a big pattern burn. It was just droplets that had ignited at some point and it went out. And you could say they were droplets because they were very small. They looked like teardrops on the flooring.
One of the odd things was there was no fire on the bed at all. Nothing on the bed was singed or burned.
The fact that the bed itself wasn't half burnt would indicate that James was not asleep in bed when the fire occurred.
The fire investigator found that odd because James had mentioned earlier that he woke up on fire, and they thought that how could he do that if there were no burn marks there?
The next thing you look for is the ignition source. What caused the heat buildup to create a fire? So you're looking for wiring, you're looking for a candle or something like that. James was not a smoker. There was no cigarettes, there was no lighter. Where the fire was, there was no ignition sources.
So was this an accident or something more sinister? Investigators find more clues in the kitchen.
There's matches, a pack of matches with a single burnt match on the edge of the counter.
I couldn't absolutely say that that was used to ignite because sometimes when you have a gas stove, which they did at the time, sometimes when you have a bad pilot light or a bad burner, people use a match to ignite that burner to continue their cooking.
Also found in the garbage can in the kitchen was a solid, heavy plastic cup. It was lying right on top of the garbage in the garbage can, which would indicate that it was relatively freshly put there. Also, it had a strong odor of residue gasoline in it, which is what you're smelling throughout the house. So it would kind of be indicative that that was used to transport the gasoline.
They find a similar piece of evidence left just outside the back door.
On the top of the garbage can, there was a white styrofoam coffee cup that had the bottom had been disintegrated. And that's what happens when you pour something with acetone, gasoline, or acid in styrofoam.
When I saw the melted cup, I kind of recognized what was going on. Gasoline will go through a styrofoam cup probably in about 30 seconds.
If someone filled the cup with gas outside, it wouldn't have lasted long.
By the time you got back to the house, you'd have basically a burnt-through cup, which would explain why it was discarded.
Evidence seems to point that James Langley had been intentionally set on fire, but there was no evidence of any forced entry into the home. So the question really is, who struck the match?
The morning after a fire gravely injures James Langley, investigators still have more questions than answers. So they ask his wife, Mary Ann, to come in for another interview.
The first time they talked to her, she was very distraught. This time she came in pretty calm.
This time when they asked her, did she have any idea how did this all come about? She said she did.
Mary Ann began to tell them that James had been diagnosed with type 2 adult diabetes, and he wasn't really taking care of himself, according to her. He wasn't taking his meds, and that might have led to what had happened.
Why don't you start with last evening and go through again what happened?
In my interview with Mary Ann Langley, she related that at around 8:30, they started slumping and also had urinated on himself, which she knew or believed to be diabetic in nature.
I said, your sugar must be up real high. I said, Langley, I'm going to take it. So I did. And I said, Langley, your sugar's 594. And then I said to him, listen, you got to go to the hospital.
After some convincing, they decided to go. Once they arrived at the hospital, the emergency room was a little crowded, and James decided he wasn't going to get out the car. He didn't want to be involved in all the people that were there. So James insisted that Mary Ann drive him home.
He was still not doing well and had a hard time taking off his clothes.
She was very upset with him, and they argued a little more about James not taking care of himself. At that point is when she decided she was going to sleep downstairs because she just couldn't reason with the man.
Mary Ann says she fell asleep in the basement bedroom. Shortly before 5 a.m., she woke up to the sound of her husband shouting.
I hear him screaming for me. I was screaming. I said, what? I went running. I said, what? Oh, God, when I see this bottle of the fight, I ran out the door. And I run to my sister's back door, screaming.
She didn't see the fire start, but she thinks she knows what happened.
Mary Ann said that she believes that James woke up in a disoriented stupor and probably set his cell phone fire. James had frequently come home with the smell of gasoline on his clothes from different jobs that they do. So the gasoline being on him is not too far-fetched. Because of the condition that people suffer from being in a diabetic haze where your numbers are so high, the detectives had to at least consider James setting his cell phone fire was a possibility.
Mary Ann says that after calling 911 from next door, she returned with her niece and nephew and found James delirious and making wild accusations.
I asked her, well, what was he saying? She basically, well, he was hallucinating, he was crazy, he didn't know what he was talking about. And when I asked her, well, what was he saying? She said, well, he said that I lit him on fire, which wasn't true.
Mary Ann couldn't believe that he accused her of something of that nature. Why would Mary Ann spend her time taking him to the hospital, arguing with him, trying to convince him to take better care of himself if she was just going to turn around and set him on fire?
He was hallucinating, you know. Why you trying to kill me? I said, what are you talking about? I was, crying and screaming, and it was terrible. It was terrible.
If somebody goes into shock, is it very possible that they're not aware of the here and now conversation and their thought patterns? Yes.
If Mary Ann had harmed James, why would she volunteer the detail of James's accusation? Investigators also ask her about the matches and cups they found.
She explained that she uses matches to light the pilot on the stove when it doesn't work automatically, and that's why that was there. The thick plastic cup, she said it was a daily use cup.
Are your fingerprints going to come back on that cup?
Oh, yeah, I use the cup all the time. That cup was in the sink last night, okay? That cup.
Marianne said they used the styrofoam cups for their daily coffee, but she doesn't know why it would end up in the back door unless James did it.
My brother knows not to set himself on fire. I mean, it can happen, but he dealt with stuff like that every day. He dealt with diesel fuel, gasoline, all kinds of oils.
It was very difficult for me to believe that my father would go get gasoline to set himself on fire.
Only one person knows exactly what happened, and unfortunately, he's lying in a hospital room, unconscious.
He had burns, reportedly about 40% of his body, on his abdomen, backs of the arms, hands, and they were second and third degree burns, which are very serious.
When I went to the hospital to see him, they had sedated him so that he wouldn't hurt himself, because he would get delirious, in his sleep from the burns and so forth and so on.
They had to take him to surgery and do the skin graft. It was maybe a 50-50, 60-40 chance that he lived. So I just could take that answer, and there was nothing I could do. And my father sitting in the hospital, going through the pain that he going through, and I might not have my father back again. So that was the hardest part.
In the days following James Langley's hospitalization, Norwalk police interview the rest of his family, starting with his niece and nephew who lived next door.
During the interviews with both of them, they reiterated what Marianne Langley in her interview had alluded to, which is that James was accusing her of lighting him on fire.
He says words to the effect that, "I know who did this to me. It was your aunt. She did this to me. She poured the liquid and she lit the match."
They tried to explain to him that the ambulance was already on its way and the police had been called. But he was so out of it that he just kind of ran out the door, got into the car, and tried to drive himself.
The niece and nephew's story strengthens the theory that James was delirious. James's other statement that night suggests more confusion.
He'd already indicated to the police that he woke up and he was on fire. And it's sort of hard to reconcile the fact that somebody can observe his wife pouring liquid on him and lighting a match when he was asleep.
Authorities asked the niece and nephew about the couple's relationship and get some surprising information.
James and Marianne had continued marital problems. In fact, it was common knowledge that James had an ongoing affair.
The affair began in 2004 when James was hired to build a wall on the property of a woman named Sylvia.
She came over to start speaking to James about it, and one thing led to another, and they became very interested in each other very quickly. She put some light back into his life that he had lost in his marriage, and the relationship quickly escalated into something romantic.
Understandably, Marianne was very upset when she learned of the affair.
I know that Marianne somehow got wind of this particular relationship, and she went in the driveway with the van, and the wall was there that he had built, and she kind of rammed the wall with the van. Things just got worse after that.
It turns out the relationship with Sylvia was just one of many affairs James had over the years, and the infidelity set off a vicious cycle in their relationship.
He wasn't happy at home, and so, he ran around. He ran around and she would catch him. And every time she would catch him, they go through a thing for a minute, and then they go stay together. I did hear her rumblings, but she was upset when I come around. I'm gonna leave your father. Okay, fine. If you're gonna leave him, okay, fine. There's nothing I can do about it.
About a year before the fire, Marianne got fed up. She had had enough. She decided to file for divorce from James.
But within a few months of Marianne trying to file for divorce, she dropped the divorce proceedings, and Marianne came back and said no, she wants to work it out with her husband.
On December 20th, 6 days after James went into the hospital, investigators interviewed James's mistress, Sylvia, to get her side of the story.
She said that James had been unhappy in his marriage for a while, and when they met, she happened to give him a safe space to come when his married life was more turmoil.
Sylvia details what she thinks started that turmoil.
She explained to the investigators that money was really the source of their marital problems.
Marianne was a kept woman, and kept women are scary because when they're put in a situation where they might lose their lifestyle, they get desperate. They just weren't happy with each other, but he was holding out, she wanted more, and it was like, money is not a big deal if you're not happy.
But there's more to Sylvia's story about Marianne.
She's a heavy gambler, too.
Because of Marianne's gambling, James decided to cut her off from the joint bank account. That led to money mysteriously ended up missing from around the house, from the office. This became a serious problem for James.
It was a repetitive cycle. One goes and does something, and the other one feels like they're going to do something to hurt the other one.
That was, I think, the final straw that made him make his decision that now was the time. I'm through with it, with the relationship.
According to her, James and her felt a sense of relief when Marianne finally filed for divorce. They thought it was over, that he would be finally done with her. But then she withdrew the case, and things went back to exactly the way they were before. The reason that Marianne stayed in the marriage is because she knew she would be better off financially staying with James than leaving him.
Sylvia explains that James had gotten Marianne to sign a prenuptial agreement.
If a divorce went down, she, because of the prenuptial, wouldn't have access to the business.
Sylvia also offers another crucial piece of information, something James said less than 48 hours before he was burned.
Let me ask you this, coming into Christmas, was there any indication or pressure or anything said to him that you...
The only thing coming into Christmas that he had said to me, and I don't know what it meant, was, oh, yeah, I know you don't think I'm doing anything, but you're going to be real surprised. And I just looked at him and said, whatever, because I've been listening to this for 2 years and I ain't seen nothing yet as far as him getting a divorce.
This is a huge revelation for the investigators because this meant that Marianne now had a motive to commit murder.
After James Langley was set on fire, the results of an analysis of the burns on his body provide an important piece of the puzzle. The burns suggest whoever threw the gasoline on James was aiming for his genital area.
The pattern that was on James was more or less, he was protecting himself by putting his hands and arms down to protect his genitalia. That's why the burn pattern was on the back of his hands and his arms.
It was indicative that he was standing and that gasoline was thrown at him.
So the question that needs to be asked is, did Marianne intentionally set James on fire as payback for his affair?
Investigators think she did, and they believe the styrofoam cup left outside was part of a first attempt to do so. When the gas ate through the styrofoam, she switched to plastic to finish the deed. On December 22, 2006, 8 days after James's attack, Norwalk police once again questioned Marianne Langley.
There's a lot of things that when we discussed things on Saturday, there's a lot of things that turned out that you told me that I, to be honest with you, have reason to question the validity of it, okay? And I asked you how the marriage was going and were there any problems or anything else, and you answered me, no. I said, is he seeing any other women? I don't think there's any other...
I said I didn't know.
Well, you did know, because you went over her house.
I hadn't been over to her house in years.
Marianne agrees to take a polygraph test to prove her innocence, but the results are inconclusive. The police officers have no choice but to let her go home.
Investigators' best hope for finding out what really happened is to speak with the victim, James Langley. But 12 days after the incident, that hope is dashed.
I got a phone call. I need to get to the hospital. I hear Ann crying in the background. So I got in the car and I flew to Bridgeport Hospital. We just stood in the room over top of them for a long time, just staring.
James passed away on December 26th at night. He went into cardiac arrest, and they fought furiously to save him. And, I waited out in the hallway, and they was unable to save him.
That was the tough point. They just told me that, he fought as long as he could. That happened the day after Christmas. Christmas will never be the same for me. I try to make it the same, but it just won't never be the same.
The ruling of the autopsy was that it was a homicide based on the burn patterns and the severity of the burns, the location of the burns.
That's when the investigation really went into full force. I didn't want to think it was Ann. I think being around her for 25 years or so, it didn't dawn on me that she could have did such a thing as they were saying that could have happened,
There was only two people in the house, her and my father. So at the end of the day, that's the only two people that know exactly what happened that night. I really believe is that she just wanted to hurt him because he'd been hurting her.
Corey has no proof, but in the days following his father's death, he does tell investigators about
But that's a lie, because I just gave her a check for $3,000.
But she's not paying you.
She hasn't paid. She's paid me once since my father's been gone.
Marianne wasn't explaining at all where any of the money was going.
We had a rock wall job going and a landscape job going. And next thing you know, we got a phone call saying to bring the bulldozer back. So I was like, what's going on? I'm asking questions. It says, Marianne says, you got to bring all of the machines back to the yard. And she sold the dump truck.
He also indicated that Marianne was trying to sell off both the business and the vehicles to the business.
In the prenup, she got nothing to do with J&L Lawson.
She never did run the business. She just proceeded to sell off assets.
Investigators believe that she killed James in order to get control of the money and to get back at him for having an affair. On March 29, 2007, the police finally come knocking on Marianne's door and arrest her for James's murder.
She was aware that she was a suspect and going to be arrested. We arrested Marianne Langley at her home without incident. She was taken into custody, brought to headquarters.
But some fear it won't be quite as easy to get a conviction.
This case is not a simple open and shut case. Hey, somebody poured gasoline on their husband, lit him on fire. There are a lot of things that need to be focused on a lot more carefully.
On October 6, 2008, nearly 2 years after the death of James Langley, his wife, Marianne Langley, goes on trial for his murder.
Prosecutors framed the case where Marianne was this vindictive woman who was seeking revenge on her husband for cutting her out of the finances and also leaving her for another woman.
This all began, they say, because James told her that morning that he was leaving to retire to North Carolina, but not with her, but with another woman. They argue that because Marianne would not have gotten any of the money based on the prenup, James leaving Marianne would have left her destitute, and that enraged her.
Prosecutors argue that, over the course of 2 decades, Marianne Langley had grown used to an increasingly lavish lifestyle. When James threatened to take that away and give it to another woman, she decided to take her revenge.
And the fact that it seemingly threw the gasoline towards his genitalia speaks volumes.
The defense presents a different theory, based on Marianne's initial statement.
There wasn't any magic science behind this. It was gasoline that clearly was the accelerant in this case. The question has always been, how did it ignite? Who set him on fire? One of the main aspects of the defense was James Langley probably did this to himself. It was an accidental burning, and there was evidence to suggest that. James Langley's condition lent itself to the possibility that he actually poured gasoline in the cup so that he could drink it. And while that sounds a little far-fetched, we had an expert witness, an endocrinologist, testify that his condition, which was such that one of the symptoms that he would have exhibited was a massive thirst. When she was asked on the stand whether or not somebody in Mr. James Langley's condition would drink gasoline, she said they would.
On October 20th, 2008, the question of what happened to James Langley is put to the jury.
Murder would be planned with intent to cause the death of somebody, and deliberate action, executing that plan with premeditation and intent. Manslaughter would be that your actions inadvertently caused the death of another person, but you caused the death.
The jury finds Marianne Langley not guilty of murder, but they do find her guilty on a lesser charge of first-degree manslaughter.
Once you take gasoline and you throw it on somebody and you light a match, there's only one intention at that point in time for me, because you could try to kill somebody. She just wanted to hurt him for all the hurt, the pain he put her through.
Marianne Langley initially faces 12 years in prison, but her sentence is contingent on one condition.
At this point, she was supposed to give an apology to the family. However, she was very arrogant with her apology. It really wasn't an apology at all. And I think basically the judge switched his decision right at that point and gave her the maximum, which was 20 years.
I think the ugliest part of this whole case is the revenge factor. We've all known women who have been scorned. We've all had breakups. We've all been through this before. Do we all go out and try to kill our partners? No. So at some point, you have to be able to control that childish impulse that's inside of you. And if not, this is the result.
It's okay to be upset about something. It's okay to hurt. But sit in it, figure out where it's coming from, right? And if it's not healthy, get rid of it. And then move forward and have a happier life.
I don't believe in revenge, so you never get revenge. Two people are just going back and forth hurting one another. This is basically what you're doing. Nobody never gets revenge. It's just a repetitive cycle. you can't prosper off other people's pain. My kids don't get to know who my father is. My kids have kids now. I got 7 grandkids. They'll never know who my father is.